The studio lights of loose women always carried a certain warmth, bright, forgiving, almost intimate. They were designed to make confessions feel safe and debates feel friendly, even when opinions clashed. That morning, no one in the ITV studio imagined those lights would soon illuminate one of the most talked about on-air confrontations in the show's history. Chris Appleton arrived early, dressed impeccably as always. His tailored charcoal blazer sat effortlessly over a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled just enough to suggest relaxed confidence. To millions, Chris was the celebrity hairstylist, the man behind some of the most iconic red carpet looks in the world. Calm, professional, and famously unflappable, he had built his reputation on precision and grace, not controversy. Today, however, the air felt different. As he waited backstage, sipping water and scrolling through messages on his phone, a junior producer approached with a tight smile. "Chris, just a quick heads up," she said. "Today's panel is Denise, Ruth, Kay, and Nadia. We'll be talking about celebrity influence, beauty standards, and authenticity in the industry." Chris nodded politely. "Sounds good." What the producer didn't say, but what lingered unspoken, was that Denise Welch had already expressed strong opinions about celebrity stylists and what she once called manufactured perfection sold as empowerment. The opening music played. Applause rolled through the studio as the hosts took their seats. "And today," Ruth Langsford announced warmly, "we're joined by one of the most influential hairstylists in the world, the man trusted by A-list celebrities everywhere, Chris Appleton." Chris walked out to enthusiastic applause, smiling, waving, and greeting the panel with polite cheek kisses. Denise smiled too, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. The conversation started smoothly enough. They talked about hair as identity, self-expression, and confidence. Chris spoke eloquently about his humble beginnings, growing up in Leicester, working his way up through salons, and believing that beauty should empower rather than intimidate. The audience nodded along. Everything felt controlled, professional. Then Denise leaned forward. "Chris," she said, tilting her head slightly, voice light but edged with challenge, "don't you think the industry you're part of has created impossible standards, especially for young women watching at home?" Chris paused for a fraction of a second, choosing his words carefully. "I think responsibility lies with all of us," he replied calmly. "But I also believe beauty can be aspirational without being damaging. It depends on how it's presented." Denise raised an eyebrow. "But isn't it presented through filters, extensions, wigs, and illusion?" She pressed. "I mean, you work with celebrities who don't look like that when they wake up in the morning." A ripple of laughter moved through the audience. Chris smiled, but there was a subtle tightening in his jaw. "No one looks camera ready when they wake up," he said evenly. "That's not deception, that's preparation. Just like lighting, wardrobe, and makeup for television." Denise didn't let it go. "But when young girls see these perfect images, styled by experts like you, don't you think they're being sold a fantasy?" The word "you" hung in the air. Chris leaned forward slightly now, his tone still measured, but firmer. "I think it becomes harmful when people don't explain the work behind it. I'm very open about what styling involves. Hair is art. It's not a moral failing to enjoy it." Denise laughed, sharp, dismissive. "Art," she repeated. "Or profit." The studio shifted. Ruth glanced nervously between them. Kay crossed her legs, sensing tension. Nadia's smile faded. Chris's smile disappeared. Completely. "With respect, Denise," he said, voice steady but noticeably colder, "my work helps people feel confident. That includes women who've been through illness, trauma, or public scrutiny. Reducing it to profit ignores that." Denise folded her arms. "Oh come on, Chris. Let's not pretend this isn't about money and celebrity culture. You're not exactly volunteering at shelters with a hairdryer." A collective gasp echoed from the audience. Chris sat back, eyes narrowing, not in anger, but in disbelief. "I actually do a lot of charity work," he said quietly. "But I don't use it as a talking point on daytime television." The silence was heavy now. Ruth jumped in quickly. "Okay, let's." But Denise wasn't finished. "I just think," she continued, speaking over Ruth, "that stylists like you are part of a system that tells women they're not enough unless they're polished, perfected, and approved by people like you." Something changed in Chris at that moment. For years, he had stayed composed under pressure, on red carpets, during live broadcasts, in front of critics and cameras. But this wasn't critique anymore. It was personal, public, and unfair. He leaned forward again, voice no longer soft. "Denise, that's a gross oversimplification," he said. "I don't tell women they're not enough. I respond to what they ask for. Empowerment means choice, not shame disguised as moral superiority." The audience applauded. Denise's smile vanished. "Moral superiority," she snapped. "I'm not the one selling fantasy for thousands of pounds an hour." Chris stood up. The movement was sudden enough to startle everyone. "I came here for a conversation," he said, looking directly at Denise, "not to be turned into a villain for doing my job with integrity." A producer's voice crackled faintly through someone's earpiece. "Chris, please sit," Ruth whispered urgently. But it was too late. Denise stood as well, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "If you can't handle criticism," she shot back, "maybe daytime TV isn't for you." Chris let out a short, humorless laugh. "No," he replied, eyes steady, voice clear. "I can handle criticism. What I won't accept is being spoken to with disrespect on a show that claims to support women lifting each other up." The studio erupted, half applause, half shocked murmurs. Off camera, producers were already moving. A floor manager stepped forward, whispering urgently, "Chris, we're going to have to take a break." Chris turned toward the audience one last time. "Thank you for listening," he said calmly. Then, as the cameras cut to an emergency graphic and the music swelled unnaturally loud, two producers approached him from either side. Viewers at home would later hear the phrase that exploded across social media within minutes. "Chris Appleton has been asked to leave the studio." But what happened after the cameras stopped rolling? What Denise said off-air? And what Chris revealed that would change the narrative completely? Was something no one was prepared for. For a split second, the Loose Women's studio felt eerily silent, like the moment after a storm when no one is quite sure what's been destroyed. The audience sat frozen, unsure whether to clap, boo, or stay perfectly still. Cameras stopped rolling, but the tension didn't disappear. If anything, it intensified. Chris Appleton was escorted just beyond the stage curtains, where the warmth of the studio lights was replaced by the harsh glare of overhead fluorescence. A senior producer held up a hand. "Chris, please wait here," she said, trying, and failing, to keep her voice neutral. Chris nodded, jaw tight. He wasn't shaking. He wasn't shouting. But anyone who looked closely could see the disappointment etched across his face. Not embarrassment. Not fear. Disappointment. Behind the curtain, Denise Welch was still standing near the panel table, arms crossed, face flushed. "I was attacked," she snapped at a runner. "Absolutely attacked." Ruth Langsford rubbed her temples. "Denise, you pushed him." "Oh, here we go," Denise scoffed. "So now I'm the villain." Kay Adams finally spoke, her voice low but firm. This stopped being a debate the moment it became personal. Denise turned sharply. He stood up. He escalated it. After being mocked, Nadia added quietly. Denise waved her hand dismissively. "Please. These celebrity types aren't used to being challenged." Meanwhile, just a few meters away, Chris leaned against the wall, exhaling slowly. A junior staffer offered him water with trembling hands. "Are you okay?" she asked. Chris took the bottle. "I'm fine. I just didn't expect that." The senior producer returned, accompanied by the executive editor of the show. "Chris," the editor began carefully, "we're going to resume the program without you." Chris nodded. "I assumed as much. This isn't a judgment on you," she added quickly. But things became combustible. Chris met her eyes. "With respect, it was combustible because I was being provoked." The editor hesitated. "Off the record, I agree. But we have a live show to salvage." Chris gave a small, tired smile. "I understand. May I at least collect my things?" As he walked toward the green room, phones were already lighting up across the building. #LooseWomen, #Chris Appleton, and #Denise Welch were climbing the UK trends at breakneck speed. Inside the studio, the show resumed awkwardly. Ruth forced a smile. "Well, passionate discussion there." The audience response was muted. Denise straightened her notes, chin high. "These conversations matter," she said defiantly. "We shouldn't shy away from calling out industries that profit from insecurity." But something had shifted. The applause didn't come. Viewers at home noticed too. Social media began to split, but not evenly. Clips of the exchange flooded X, Instagram, and TikTok within minutes. One moment, in particular, went viral, Kris calmly saying, "Empowerment means choice, not shame disguised as moral superiority." Millions watched it on loop. Backstage, Kris sat alone, scrolling through his phone now buzzing nonstop. Messages poured in from clients, friends, and even celebrities. "You handled that with class. Proud of you. You didn't deserve that." Then a message from an unknown number appeared. "Denise Welch would like to speak with you." Kris stared at the screen for a long moment. "Do you want me to block it?" a producer asked quietly. Kris shook his head. "No, I'll talk to her." They met in a small side room. No cameras, no audience, just two chairs and a table that suddenly felt far too small. Denise entered first, arms folded as always. Kris followed, closing the door behind him. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Denise broke the silence. "You embarrassed me on my own show." Kris didn't sit. "It's not your show." Her eyes flashed. "That attitude right there is why we're here," Kris interrupted, still calm. "You didn't challenge my ideas. You challenged my character." Denise scoffed. "Oh please. You're used to praise." Kris finally sat down, leaning forward. "No," he said quietly. "I'm used to scrutiny. What I'm not used to is being spoken down to for doing honest work." Denise looked away. "You think I don't care about women," she said. "I've spent my life fighting for them." "I don't doubt that," Kris replied. "But fighting for women doesn't mean tearing other people down, especially not in front of millions." Silence again. Then Denise's voice softened, just slightly. "I lost myself once," she admitted. "To image. To pressure. To thinking I wasn't enough unless I fit a mold." Kris nodded. "And I've helped women rebuild themselves after losing hair to chemo. After breakdowns. After abuse. Beauty can heal, or harm, depending on how it's handled." She looked at him then. Really looked. For the first time, there was no defensiveness in her eyes, only conflict. "I still don't like what the industry does," she said. "That's fair," Kris replied. "But next time, debate the system. Not the person sitting in front of you." Denise exhaled sharply. "I should have handled it better." Kris stood. "So should the show." That evening, ITV released a carefully worded statement. "Loose Women encourages open discussion." Today's debate became heated, and the program made a decision in the moment to de-escalate. But the public wasn't satisfied. By nightfall, the narrative had flipped. Major outlets ran headlines like, "Viewers defend Kris Appleton after on-air clash." "Loose Women under fire for handling of guest." "Did Denise Welch go too far?" The following morning, something unprecedented happened. Kris Appleton posted a single message on Instagram. "No anger. No accusation. Just truth. I believe in respectful conversation, even when we disagree. Yesterday was difficult, but I stand by my words. Beauty should empower, not shame." The post reached millions within hours. Celebrities commented. Fans shared their own stories. Cancer survivors thanked him. Stylists spoke out about the unseen emotional labor of their work. And Denise, she returned to Loose Women the next day, but something was different. She opened the show herself. "Yesterday," she said slowly, "I crossed a line. Debate is healthy. Disrespect is not." The audience applauded. Kris Appleton was never officially banned from Loose Women. But he was never invited back either. Instead, he gained something far more powerful than a daytime TV appearance. He gained respect. From the public, from his peers, and from people who finally felt seen. And Loose Women, they learned that sometimes, the person asked to leave the studio is the only one who truly walked out with dignity.